I'm a very gentle man, even-tempered and good-natured, who you'll never hear complain, who has the milk of human kindness by the quart in every vein. A patient man am I, down to my fingertips, the sort who never could, ever would, let an insulting remark escape his lips. Hello. That's enough there. Hello, I'm Mark Lamarr, and in a minute I'll be spouting off about something, you know what I'm like. But before I do, let's see who's been in the news. Ricky Martin revealed this week that living La Vida Loca isn't all it's cracked up to be. You see the state of my bedroom, I'm knackered, he said. It's official. Computer games are now more popular than accordions. Christ-worshipping religious nutter, the Bishop of Bermondsey, condemned the use of mobile phones. He said, wouldn't the world be a better place if we all said a prayer instead? Something like, I'm on the train. Yeah, it's pretty busy, yeah. Anyway, I've got to go now, everyone's looking at me. We're going into a tunnel, bye. Anne Summers spoke out this week at a conference for humane cosmetics. She said none of our lubricants are tested on animals. Oh, hold on. Idiot, dimwit, knobhead idiot, Dave Spadwell, has had a pint of Guinness tattooed on his arm. What an idiot. It's my favourite drink, he said. Yeah, it was a tattoo, you idiot. That will stay there forever, you idiot. Here's a picture of Mariah Carey with lobster claws. Newlyweds Paul and Sandra Davis were dismayed when moving house to realise that they'd left their cat Parsley 200 miles away at the old house. Imagine their surprise when 2 days later, Parsley turned up on their driveway in the tread of the removal van's tyres. Here's this week's before and after. Here's Anthea Turner, before I drew all over her face, and here she is after. Faye Tozer from Steps wasn't in the news this week, but she was in my heart. I was reading an interview this week with Faye. I couldn't help it because it's part of the wallpaper in my shrine, and everywhere I look there's interviews with Faye. And I had this brilliant question, because you know, Steps are light and frothy, and they said to her, when she died, how would you like to be buried? And I expect you've already thought of, probably all of you have thought of an answer for that, but none of you would have thought along the same lines as Faye, because she's a philosopher. She doesn't think like me and you, right? She said, I wouldn't like to be buried, because that's a big fear of mine, being buried alive. She answered a completely different question. Sure, where's this answer coming from? You're not cleared for landing. And then she said, then she said, no, I wouldn't like to be buried. She said, I'd like to be cremated. And I thought, so you wouldn't mind being cremated alive then? That'd be a laugh. That'd be a nice way to go, would it, Phoenix Faye? Anyway, worse than being buried alive would be buried alive but facing down. Because then even if you could escape, you'd be digging the wrong way. That'd be a really horrible way to go, wouldn't it? But I was thinking it's weird to think that someone like that, she's rich, she's beautiful, she can dance like a Chinaman, she's a philosopher, and let's face it, she's the sort of woman that if you were hosting the finals of Robot Wars, you'd probably ask her to judge it. You know, she's got it all. But she still has fears. Mostly, I admit, of me. I assume that's what the restraining order's all about. I mean, you wouldn't involve judges just for a laugh, would you? Anyway, she has quite specific fears, and people do now. There used to be big collective fears. A whole nation would be scared of famine or volcanoes or various gods. Or when I was a kid, it was nuclear war. But they've all been conquered as fears now, so we can all kick back, put on our smoking jackets, light up a panatella, and enjoy the tiny little niggly fears in life, which for me is Shane Ritchie getting another series. Obviously, my neighbour putting a shark in his roof again. Or my biggest fear, which is obviously Faye buying a curtain for that back window. And, you know, people have different fears. You might have a fear of spiders. I don't know. You might have a fear of the unexplained. You might have a fear of the badly explained. You might have a fear of things being explained really well, but you don't understand them. You might have a fear of trying to explain something to this idiot. I don't know. But life's of a generally pretty good standard now, so the only real collective fear is of change, which usually means the forward march of science, which is strange because science has generally been good to us. Does anyone remember the mouse with a big ear on its back? Science did that. That's fantastic, isn't it? I have no idea what it's for, but he looks good. Someone told me it was for ear transplants, but that can't be right, can it? Because you'd have one normal fleshy ear and one big white furry ear on the other side. You'd look like you're in Bjork's dream. But anyway, I was wondering if they actually plumbed the ear into his real ears. Because mice have very acute hearing anyway, don't they? But imagine that, a big Jodrell Bank ear on his back. There's a kestrel in Budapest, I'm sure there is. He's terrified. I was thinking of all the other mice going, you've seen Slater, John's back? Shh, he can hear you. When Dolly the sheep was cloned, every single scientist in the entire world working in that field said, this is fantastic. They've cracked the genetic code. This has untold ramifications for the health of mankind. But whenever these events are reported in the press or in the news, they can't talk to scientists because scientists are boring. So, of course, what they do is they go and ask the man on the street what he thinks about cloning. And the man on the street, let's face it, is me and you, pinheads. We don't know what we're on about, but we can't say, I don't know, because that makes us look really stupid. So we have to come up with like a really good explanation. And what they normally do, let's go and ask Bill on the burger van, what do you think about the cloning of the sheep? And Bill on the burger van will go, well, it's all wrong. He knows he's on fairly safe footing if he says it's wrong. He can't be disproved on that. It's all wrong because what they've done there is they've tampered with nature. And if I know one thing, you can't tamper with nature. Yeah, you can, Bill. You pick your nose, you tamper with nature. Of course you can tamper with nature. They've got canals, firemen tamper with nature. Wipe my arse, I've tampered with nature. Where do you live? Wookie hole, eating moss? Hoping the sun will come up tomorrow? Have you got a pillow? Because pillows are tampering with nature, because feathers don't belong in a big pillow. What do you think nature would prefer? My head on a pillow or you sitting on a goose? What do you think? No, that ain't what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what I could make out. The reason they've cloned this sheep is so that in years to come, we can pick our children. And I know one thing, I don't want a sheep as a child. No, Bill, hold on, that's not quite what's going on there. No, I know what's going on. Eventually, we'll all be able to pick perfect kids, lean, athletic, intelligent, happy children, and I can't have that. That's wrong. But that, you know, that isn't going to happen. This is a big fear that people have. But people won't pick kids like Xena Warrior Princess and Superman. People are vain. People will pick kids like themselves. Nosy people will say, well, I'm nosy. I want a kid with just a big eye. Just no body, just a big eye. Maybe a couple of feet and an eye. And other people will be saying, oh, some of the greatest nights I've had in my life has been down the old line dancing. I want a great line dancing kid. And the thing about line dancing is you can't really do it on your own. So I want an 8-legged child. So when he does that, he looks like he's having a great time with loads of friends or whatever they do. And other people will be saying, oh, I don't care. As long as my kid's happy. I want a happy child. I want a child like a clown with a big ginger afro and size 42 shoes and squirting flowers as nipples. The biggest bogeyman of recent years has been the genetically modified food, and the problem there is how it's grown and what its effect might be on other crops. It can be quite scary. But whenever I read about it in the papers, these aren't the issues that are raised. All it's ever simplified to is a picture of a carrot, like that, and next to it says Frankenstein food. And I'm looking at a carrot, and apparently what I'm seeing there is Frankenstein. And I saw that film, and I can't find the link. I have no fear of this carrot locking itself in a castle and the villagers trying to ram their way in. It's not a scary carrot. That, apparently, is Frankenstein carrot. And what we got there is Wolfman tomato. And there's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde cucumber. That's pretty terrifying, that one. This is the courgette from the Black Lagoon. And here's Godzilla asparagus. They're terrifying, aren't they? It's like a horror version of the Munch Bunch when they're all on the same plate. Genetically modified food's a very complex issue. So let's go and find out from Bill on the burger van what he thinks about genetically modified food. Bill, what do you think about genetically modified food? Well, I'll tell you one thing. It's all wrong. Why is that then, Bill? Well, look, what they've done is they've made bigger, shinier carrots. And I can't have that. What's going to happen in 20 years' time? Is my daughter going to marry a walrus? No, Bill, even for you, we can't use that. That's too adult. No, I know what I'm talking about. Look at it this way. These tomatoes, they're getting fatter and stronger by the year, aren't they? In 50 years' time, are all the humans going to live in a giant safari park run by Italian plum tomatoes, using our women for their every whim? Bill, have you been watching Planet of the Apes over the weekend? Because I don't think you have any grasp on what's actually going on. I think the reason people are so scared of science is because no one really likes science teachers. They were always the most evil of all the teachers, weren't they? No matter how young you were, when you met a science teacher, you knew that he was a failed scientist. Just like you knew a geography teacher, a failed travel agent. You just knew that from the second you walked in. And all the years, in the 4 years I took physics, the one thing I learned from my science teacher was, I don't care what the experiment was, I'd be burning magnesium ribbon or growing cress. I knew that at some point during that experiment, I would learn how much it hurts when a ruler is smacked around your head for being stupid. Oh, science teachers love telling you you're stupid, don't they? Really, I'm the stupid one. You're the science teacher. I'm 10. You can't explain it to me. Yeah, I'm the stupid one. That seems fair enough. Yeah, you're really smart. You haven't worked out who's been sticking that compass in your tyres every Friday. Yeah, you're the smart one. And because of that, science terrifies me. I don't know if that's the same for everyone else. I met Carol Vorderman once. I thought, here we go, smack round the head. But she was actually very pleasant. She did knee me in the testicles, but that was completely unrelated to science. I don't think I deserved it. But I'm completely terrified of science and the onward march of it. People ask me if I'm on the information superhighway, and I tell them I've only just learnt to spell bollocks on a calculator. When I say bollocks on a calculator, it's normally time for a guest. And my first guest is the author of 10 Rillington Place, which was turned into one of the most terrifying films of all time. His latest book totally refutes the existence of God, and even more frightening, he used to work alongside Robin Day. Please welcome Sir Ludovic Kennedy, ladies and gentlemen. Ludovic, thank you very much for being here in the first place. I really enjoyed All in the Mind. I read that, was it last year when it came out?
Yes.
And it was a great book. But when you were writing that, was there no fear? Was there a completely, I am right about this, there is no God?
Yes, it was a great relief to me to get it out of my system, because for years and years and years I'd paid lip service to what everybody pays lip service to. You know, there is a God, and he is looking after us, and he gets angry if we do the wrong things and that kind of thing. And then I suddenly said to myself, over the years, this is nonsense. This is just absolute moonshine.
Has there been no regret since then? I mean, I think everyone, and I broadly don't believe, everyone has those moments of like, well, I can't know, can I? I can't know, and to make that big statement.
There's a saying that religion sprang because out of ignorance came fear, and out of fear came gods. The point about gods is they've all been invented by human beings.
Well, in your opinion, obviously.
No, I mean, this is so. They have all been invented.
Oh, no,
there were no gods.
In your
there
opinion.
were no gods before human beings, were there?
Well, we don't know.
Well, of course there weren't. I mean, the human beings created them.
When you're a child growing up in the 20s, there must have been a fear of God. You must have been told, if you don't do this, yes, God will do something bad.
Of course. Well, we all had that. But I've thrown it down the bathwater.
Throwing the God away with the bathwater. Yeah. It's a lovely new phrase. Yeah. Can you see how you know, having a God, having a fear for society is quite a good thing. It's a good thing to cohesively keep a society together.
I think it's a rotten thing.
Do you?
Yeah.
But society, in many ways, is crumbling from what we knew it as. And I think that's because there isn't a fear nowadays.
No, I mean, I think to get rid of fear, if you can, is a great thing to do. I mean, I've got some fears. We all do.
Well, what are yours?
Well, one fear which comes from that, and that is I don't want to have a long and painful dying. I'd like my death to be quick.
Do you have a preferred method?
Of dying?
Yeah.
Oh, you know, Harold Macmillan's wife was walking across the hall of their house in the country called Birch Grove, and she suddenly went down like that, and she's had a heart attack, and she went as quick as that. I'd love that. That would be great.
Being a heart attack.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? When you feel it's time to go, I'll take you out raving. We'll go clubbing somewhere, we'll pump you up full of hallucinogenic drugs, and we'll dance the night away. If I can assist you I'll be like a subsidiary member of the Voluntary Euthanasia Society.
Yes, good for you. Well, I'm president of it, so.
I know.
Yeah. And that's something that you know is coming. It's a worldwide movement, voluntary euthanasia. Voluntary, somebody who is in the last extremis of pain and suffering and wants to go. And there are hundreds and thousands of people like that today, and they want to go, and they should be helped to go. And the medical profession already does help them, but it can only do it by giving them a little bit too much heroin, and so it's allowed to do that.
Well, that's probably a relatively nice, tranquil way to go.
Yeah.
The old overdose.
Well, it is, except it's not the best thing for going quickly. If you want to go quickly, heroin can take a long time.
This is like an advert for your society, isn't it? What are the best drugs then, Sir Ludovic? You know, everyone there's an innate fear of death, of course.
Yeah.
Do you?
No, not death. I'm not afraid of death. Not afraid of death a bit, because death for me is the end. I mean, I don't know when people talk about the afterlife, I don't know what they're talking about.
That's a big thing to face, as you say, well, I'm not going to be around anymore.
No, that's wonderful.
Is it?
Oh, my.
I don't mean I'm not going to be around. That would be
you're-
wonderful. I meant you not being around anymore.
No, but you see, people go on about an afterlife. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't think they know what they're talking about.
No, but it's a sort of a nice dream. I often don't know what's going on in my dreams, but sometimes
Yes,
they're fun
as
to
long
have.
as you don't take it seriously.
But you might as well have some kind of
Dream.
fantasy if people want to think of
Yes,
it in that
well,
way.
that's what religion's all about. It's having fantasies.
See, I would think that's the good thing about religion, is that at least you can have that hope. And to me, what would be scarier is no one believing there was a God, no one believing there was something they had to answer to.
Look what the Christian religion is based on. Nonsense. Virgin births, physical resurrections, supernatural miracles, all that kind of thing.
There are good bits, though, aren't there?
What?
There are good bits. There are some fairly obvious moral lessons that, you know, if people have to be taught it by, you know, some sort of spiritual mumbo-jumbo, as you believe, then that's as good a way to teach them as any.
Yeah, well,
Like, I'm sure, you know, I don't know if there is one or not, but if there is, he's likely to be going, oh, Ludovic's been dissing me on television now. I suppose you can't lose, can you?
well, I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I mean, there it is.
One of the things that I suppose what I know you for best is your campaigning for people who've been wrongly imprisoned, and that I think has been a fairly big fear of mine in my life. I suspect many young men, I suppose there's a fear of sodomy that many people have, and I don't mean that. I know a few of you went, oh, you said sodomy, but I do believe that is sort of one of the few fears left for adult males of whatever sexual persuasion. But anyway, fear of imprisonment is a big one of mine. And do you think that's been part of why you've campaigned so heavily against people who've been wrongly imprisoned?
Well, to my mind, it's just about the worst thing that can happen to one, to be not only put in prison, but like Timothy Evans, to be executed for something that you haven't done. I can't imagine a greater trauma or torment for a human being for that to happen.
I mean, the 10 Millington Place book, when you read the book, it's a fantastic book, it just seems so obvious that this man was innocent.
Well, it may seem obvious to you. You probably won't remember this, but in my day, people went around saying, British justice is the finest system of justice in the world. Of course, they'd never studied any other system of justice. And we in Americans share what I think is a ghastly system of justice, which is the adversary system. Two sides, each one trying to win. And, of course, it's an invitation to corruption. It's nearly always the police. The police get hold of somebody who they think probably did it, and there's not enough evidence, but they're certain in their own minds, they've convinced themselves they did it, so they don't egg the pudding.
You see, now this is my fear now.
Yes.
Now you're going, oh, Mark, you can go to prison very shortly.
Yes, you'll be there before long.
Yeah, will you campaign for me, at least?
Well,
It'll
depends
probably be only a short thing, a speeding offence, or
it depends what you're
urinating
there
against
for.
the palace or something like that.
If you're there for sodomy, I shan't help you.
And I shan't ask you to. Ludovic Kennedy, thank you very much for joining us. Ludovic Kennedy, ladies and gentlemen. Now, it's generally considered that the best way to deal with fears is to confront them. And that can work for flying and spiders and water. Not recommended for avalanches. Obviously, never confront an avalanche. Or lava. You know, don't confront that. Or a premenstrual Sinead O'Connor. Don't confront that. Hollywood has exploited our fears for great profit over the years. People love getting scared. We've had Jaws, obviously, fear of a deadly shark. There was The Swarm, fear of killer bees. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, fear of shrinking your kids. The Return of Shaft, fear of the shaft returning. I don't really never saw that one. My favourite thriller's Vertigo, where Kim Novak's scared of heights. Because first of all, I thought, well, that won't be too scary, because if you're scared of heights, they're quite easy to avoid, aren't they? They're not going to creep up on you. And you'd think someone who's scared of heights, that she would have kept a close eye on sea level. But Hitchcock, he's the master of suspense, so he found numerous ways of keeping Kim Novak petrified. And every few minutes, Jimmy Stewart would turn to her and he'd say, do you want to go and look at the new bells high up in the church tower? And she'd go, yeah, that sounds nice. Ah! And then he'd say, do you fancy, you know, a little day trip out, maybe going up to the Empire State Building? And she'd go, not half. Ah! And then he'd go, I'm entering a balloon race across the Alps. Would you like to be my partner? And she'd go, you just try and stop me, Colonel. Ah! Vertigo's a great subject for film, because that could happen to anyone. Usually Hollywood goes a bit mad with, you know, with its horror films with a big giant fantastical monsters like Godzilla munching its way through a city. So I'm pleased to say that there's a new vogue in Hollywood this winter, and that's going to be realistic horror films that deal with everyday fears. And here are some of the ones I'm looking forward to. It starts with the peeling, then the flaking, and ends with the nights of horror lying in bed saying, oh, get off! Don't get off! Don't touch me! Keep the sheets off me! Don Johnson in mild sunburn. In the garden, no one can hear you peel. Coming soon, Eagle Eye Cherry, Biffy Van Sleet and that fat girl from Emmerdale Farm in the terrifying story of Disco Shame. They're joined by an all-star cast including Ant from Ant and Dec and Dec from Ant and Dec. Yes, it's Ant and Dec in Singled Out by a DJ. It's Oops Inside Your Head. They've taken a vow of violence. These brides of Christ are married to the fist. God help the mister that comes between me and my sisters, because you can't hit back when you're being beaten by a nun. Ice Cube and Mary Tyler Moore share the screen in Force of Habit, under 18s not admitted. They all thought it couldn't happen to them. They all knew when to duck. One man, one attic, one hidden peril. Dennis Hopper in Danger, Low Beam, from the makers of Cupboard Door. In the attic, no one can hear you say, oh, you fucker. Meaningful looks at family get-togethers, knee pads scattered round the house, mouthwash delivered daily by milkman. What can it all add up to? Dave Disney presents Honey, I Blew Your Dad, starring Daryl Hannah, Tom Selleck, and the voice of Ernest Borgnine. It'll leave a lump in your throat. So there are some of the things that I'm looking forward to in the cinemas over the winter. I'm guessing my second guest doesn't know the meaning of fear. Probably the only judo expert motorbiking priest who researches the paranormal in the UK. Welcome onto the stage, the Reverend Lionel Fanthorpe. Do you have, because I see, when I see, you know, you're into researching the paranormal and you're a physically strong man. What do you have fears about?
The only thing on a serious level I'd have fears about is people I love. I don't want anything to happen to my kids or my wife or, you know. I think it sounds awful, but I don't think there's anything scares me as me. It's the people I care about that I'm worried about.
There's nothing, though, that, you know, I don't like that. I'm not scared of Daddy Longlegs, but I'll do that when they come along. And there must be something that's just like, oh, that creeps me out.
Oh, yeah, I've got one of those. It's a fish. And I love fish when they're swimming happily around in aquariums, and I love fish when they're on my plate. But it's that in-between stage while they're neither quite alive nor quite dead. And it goes back to when I was a tiny kid. Dad used to take me fishing, and he had these theories that you got to make a man of the boy. Take you that fish off that hook, boy.
I bet your dad wasn't scared because he sounded like a pirate.
Yeah. Well, he was the next best thing. He was a Norfolk donkey dealer. What we used to call a donkey dealer.
That sounds like prison slang. Yeah. Oh, he's a Norfolk donkey dealer. You know what? One of the most frightening things I've ever seen, catfish, or ugly-looking fish. Mm-hmm. I was in a fishmonger's, big pile of catfish. You know, they pile them all up and they spray them and it was wet. The fishmonger was out the back.
Right.
I went in and this catfish slid off the top onto the floor, which was wet.
Right.
And because they've got the big things, it started crawling along the floor towards
you.
Yeah. And it was like the next stage of evolution. This one's gone, I'm off, I'm not hanging about with this lot. They're in a really bad way. Started coming towards me, I'm guessing for the secret of fire. When you were doing stuff for 14 TV, I don't know if you were sort of researching into the paranormal before that, or that
was
just...
long before, about 50 years.
But were there things that you thought that sort of, you know, gave you the willies, sent the shivers up you?
One of the strangest things that we ever investigated on 14 TV was a haunted car. This guy had this ancient Capri. And there were all kinds of strange legends attached to it that somebody had committed suicide in it. And it had this number plate, ARK 666. So, of course, the guy who owns the car phones me up and says, Lionel, I'm having trouble with this car. I had it parked outside, and the house was struck by lightning. He said, and I was lying on my back with sparks coming out of my boots. He said, I've got to have something done to that car. So I went over and did an exorcism on the car for him. And I said, should be fine now, Keith.
You said this like a regular service.
Yeah, it's like exercise.
Oh, not this afternoon, mate.
Yeah, no, we got 2 funerals and a wedding. I'll come Thursday. So I go down and I'm sprinkling holy water into this cup. This is, you know, the thing that makes you feel strange. Not scared, but strange. Of all the exorcisms I've ever conducted, this was the only one in which the holy water in the little holder I'd got as I was sprinkling it into the car was getting hot. Now, not enough to scald you, but as hot as a hot cup of tea. And I thought, well, maybe we're meeting opposition here. Maybe there really is something psychic and unpleasant in this thing. On the train going back to Cardiff that night, we get about as far as Swindon, and there's an almighty crash, and the little voice comes over the tannoy and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, but we'll have to take you home by bus. Vandals have thrown a log under the train."
Wow.
And I thought, well, if I threw the guy out of the car, he's just thrown me out of my train. Maybe this is revenge.
It's going to follow you round.
He's
Any
followed me round,
transport
yeah.
from then on.
Yeah.
Do you believe in that? Do you believe in exorcism? Do you do it as a service because people need to have their mindset at ease, or do you actually believe in
I
it?
certainly believe in life after death, and I think if, you know, just as, although there are a great many very nice people in this world, there are some odd guys as well, and maybe they remain odd when they get over to the other side. I certainly believe that we survive death, and maybe there are other things out there as well. I don't know. I go into it as an investigator, totally open-minded.
How do you go about it? Do you just go in and sprinkle some water and go, no, it's fine?
Well, there's...
If you're in a rush that day,
Yeah.
you've got 17 things to do and
It depends.
3 of them are exorcisms.
It depends, you know, how long the people have got and how long you've got. I would say normally a serious service of exorcism, if the family was convinced, if 2 or 3 psychic friends had been into that house and had told me that they thought something was there, then I'd go through a full exorcism, which would include Bible ringing and sprinkling of holy water and bringing a cross into the room and maybe leaving some crucifixes on the wall, certainly sprinkling the doorways and blessing the people. It could take maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, like a full service.
But surely they could do that themselves.
It's the matter of what you yourself believe about what the other guy can do for you. Just a few weeks ago, I was called in to exorcise a cinema in Bristol, and one of the young ushers there had actually been so frightened of the ghosts that he believed he'd seen that he'd given up his job. So I took a psychic friend with me, and the young fellow that had gone to help suddenly collapses in front of me on the floor, holding his stomach and saying, "They're attacking me." And the medium was saying, "Yes, they're attacking him. I can see them." And I'm standing here, and I can see no more ghosts there than I can here tonight. And
Look.
oh, there they. Oh, yes. I missed that one. So, do you remember the old martial arts film about the blind swordsman, where he had to be shown where the enemy was before he could go for? Well, I felt a bit like him. There's this medium telling me, they're here. So I'm standing in front of this poor guy on the
Like a
floor.
cannon and ball sketch.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And anyhow, so I said some prayers of exorcism, and the medium says, "They're going." And the guy gets up off the floor and says, "I feel better now." Now,
Wow.
I can't explain it, but it meant something to them.
Yeah.
I saw nothing, I heard nothing. There was a very strange smell at that point. And you remember in the old...
But I think I can explain that.
And it wasn't the guy on the floor.
Are you sure?
All the medieval stories of exorcism and demons involved a strong smell of sulphur. If you read the old accounts and this thing appears, and old Dr. D would say it had a sulphurous smell about it.
It sounds more like ammonia than sulphur.
More like ammonia than sulphur, yeah.
Lionel Fanthorpe, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. So, what have we learned about fear? Well, we've learned that fears have shifted from the spiritual to the technological. But usually fear is based on ignorance. I know people who are scared of the microwave. They say, well, it can turn a potato into mush. Imagine what that's doing to my brain. Yeah, but imagine what you're doing to my brain. And furthermore, I don't think your brain becoming any mushier is going to be a big problem for the world, mush brain. Good night.